Hey, it's Mazzy, and welcome to a conversation with Patrick Milligan at Rhino Records and Kevin Gray. By the time you see this, you probably heard of the two new September Rhino High Fidelity releases. We're going to talk about those two releases. Obviously, these are two, especially one of them, records that are very dear to me. It's the 50th anniversary of Graham Parsons' Grievous Angel. We'll get into that. The other one is the 1977 Emmylou Harris Luxury Liner, which is a title song written by Graham Parsons, ironically. In a way, and we'll talk about this, Patrick, and Patrick mostly in this part of it. This is, as I recall, the first real pairing, two records that really kind of go together as an aperitif and a dessert, maybe, or whatever you want to call it. But this is in my top 50 of all time favorite records 50 years ago when this came out. And I just adore it. And we should get into the little bit of the history of it too. But of course, having Kevin here, especially, and this being the Rhino High Fidelity series, we got to talk about the sound and the mastering. And, I listened to these yesterday twice, and I listened once again to my two originals, which I have from 1974 and 1977. And to me, they're not very different. They're very close, but there's something that in terms of, I always have a hard time conveying what I hear. I always want to say fuller or more soundscape or the deeper bass and the tighter drums. There's something a little different, but not so different like some of the other releases you put out, I think. And anyway, we'll get into that a little bit. But why did you choose these two at this point in the Hi-Fi series?
Well, a couple of reasons. One, if I had to say that I were going to be making hi-fi titles for myself to have in my collection, these two would be there. So I'm with you on Grievous Angel. It's just one of my all-time faves. So really wanted to do that. I have a feeling that people are going to respond well. The 50th anniversary that you mentioned was part of the impetus, and also that September is Americana month, so we wanted to do some kind of tied to that a little bit. So,
and we didn't even call it Americana back then, did we? Did you ever hear the term?
No,
right?
no.
Somebody made it up in Austin.
Yeah, it was alt country for a while, and yeah, it's been through country rock. Graham liked to call it cosmic American music, and
that's a good point, cosmic American music, because I read the inserts in these, and I'll pull them out and show them a little bit. But what's Graham Parsons always is considered the guy that invented country rock, which he's one of a number of people that worked in it. And really, all the country rock that he invented, supposedly, or he influenced, obviously, we go back to 1968 with this album. This is the original Columbia version of the Byrds when Graham Parsons brought in and really kind of pushed them into doing almost traditional country. This is more of a country album than a country rock album. It happens to be hippies doing Louvin Brothers songs and kind of gospel country. And then, of course, International Submarine Band, which is another record that this bombed pretty much. I mean, had a cult following years later. This totally bombed on Lee Hazelwood's label. And ironically, my copy, I don't have an original. This is a Sunday's copy that I just discovered, reminded that Kevin Gray cut this.
By the way, unlike a lot of the Sunday stuff, that was cut from the original master tape.
That's good to know. And again, this links into the other title. The song on here is the title of the Emmylou Harris record, Luxury Liner. So this all interconnects. But the country that he brought, I mean, really, Graham Parsons never had hits. He never had hit records while he was alive.
Right.
And going back to this, I like to talk a little about the history, because this was a posthumous record that came out 4 months after he died of an overdose in Joshua Tree. He left after the recordings were finished, and he goes to Joshua Tree, and the stuff happens, and then the whole story, in which you can read all in this Graham Parsons book by Ben Fong Torres, which is a fabulous book. I'm promoting too many things, not just your stuff here. But
make it to the 27 club.
Right, exactly. The only thing I wish you had included, if it's even around, is the original artwork that Graham Parsons wanted, because this was meant to be a Graham Parsons Emmylou Harris duet album. And Graham's wife, I guess, Gretchen, didn't like that idea. And after it was put out, put like in the GP with Emmylou Harris, her photo was taken off. I don't even know what that photo was. I don't know if you know.
I know the story, but I don't know
Yeah.
what the photo was.
When you got the tapes, I mean, did you know this album very well?
I had heard it. I don't own it. I mean, I was sort of vaguely familiar. I don't know what the term would be. Yeah, tape.
And so
Uh, I'm a fan. I mean, I love Graham Parsons. So, yeah.
do you refer to the original copies at all or not?
No.
Okay.
I kind
So
of.
you do your own thing because they're very faithful to it. But
Well, it's a very good sounding record. The tape, it didn't require much. I mean, it sounded great.
in the last year, I think Vinyl Me Please did it as well. So that wasn't cut by Kevin either, was it?
I think those are usually done at Sterling.
They're Sterling, okay. Because this is a beautiful album. The other one we're going to get to in 1977, and you and I had a conversation on this because in 1975, the Warner Brothers guy at San Francisco gave me this copy of the first album. And what's great about these two albums is not just Graham Parsons, country influences in music, but the band that really kind of crosses over. And the nucleus is Elvis Presley's touring band, especially James Burton and Glenn D. Harding on piano. It's a killer band. And then that became later the hot band for Emmylou Harris. So the DNA between these two is pretty amazing when you think that Emmylou Harris took what Graham left and ran with it and became extremely popular, more than he ever was.
No, and she's always acknowledged that too. She just kept the mission going after he left, so, and did a very admirable job, and has made not a bad album in her entire career, basically.
Not at all. And I know the first one, she was on Reprise for the first two, and then went, I guess, to Nashville, Warner Brothers Nashville, and put out the rest of it. I forgot about that crossover. I don't know if her.
Well, I think it was broader than that, because other, like Fleetwood Mac was on Reprise all the way through the self-titled album, and then Rumors On was Warner. So I think there was just some shift at the label and how they assign those things.
It's unfair to compare something from 1974 even to 77, because in the 70s it seems like the sound just really grew in terms
changing rapidly.
I mean, in your experience between not just with these two records, but from 74, you started around that time, didn't you? Or
me?
Yes.
72.
72. So you said you saw that difference in recording. I mean,
I did.
And there's a big difference here. You got the same band somewhat. You got James Burton on here. And in fact, he mentions James Burton with that pink paisley guitar on the track here. And then you got him on here, but you also only have him on half, and you get Albert Lee, who is incredible on this.
Gee, too bad they couldn't get a better guitarist, huh? What a slob.
Albert Lee is unbelievable.
He's amazing.
It's funny. I was one day at Rhino back in my first stint, and James Austin, who did the notes for both of these interviews, had James Burton in the office and brought him around to meet me. And I was like, oh man, it's such a pleasure to meet you. And the next day was the Concert for George premiere at the Warner Brothers lot, and Albert Lee was there. And I walked up to him and, said, hello, super nice guy. And I said, wow, I got to meet two of my favorite guitar players in 2 days. And he goes, who's the other one? I said, James Burton. And he went, wow.
And that was a great time.
He's heavily influenced by
and they crossed over that time, because I was fortunate enough when this album came out, I saw Emmylou and the Hot Band at a club called the Boarding House in San Francisco. And that's cool. James Burton was in the band. And then I followed and I saw him later, Albert Lee. That's when Rodney Crowell and Glenn D. Harding was playing. And oh my God, that was one of the tightest bands. And we talk about country and country rock. There's definitely rock and roll on these records, but the essence of country, more so than even like a band like the Eagles, for instance, that's really a rock band with great harmonies and a whole different sound. There's like country DNA in these and gospel.
Absolutely. Yeah. They don't shy away from it, for sure. It's part of what I always loved about those records, because I, grew up a rock fan, but grandparents were into country all the way back from Jimmy Rogers and Carter family to Buck Owens and stuff like that. So, and my dad bought Sweetheart of the Rodeo when it came out, and just I love that stuff. I didn't really listen to country radio that much after a certain point. And to me, when these, records came out, it was like, wow, this is the kind of stuff I thought was really cool that you don't hear on country radio anymore. So,
It wasn't hip. I mean, that's why, like,
yeah.
the Byrds did it, and it wasn't a hip thing. In fact, I get the story with the Byrds. They played the Grand Ole Opry, and they almost got booed off. And that song that was a Graham Parsons and Roger McGuinn wrote, "Drugstore
Drugstore,
Truck
truck driving,
Driving Man," is against
about
the
Ralph
radio.
Emery.
Yeah, exactly. So, Kevin, when you take these, okay, you, so you don't have the original records with you. It's probably different than when you work with Joe Harley. Do you have original Blue Notes when you work with Joe Harley, or do you just?
Yeah, we don't reference them that much though. In
Okay.
the classic series, I don't have originals at all.
Okay. Okay. So you take these. What do you do? What did you do with these two records? I mean, that's the bottom line. We're talking about audiophile things. I
Yeah.
dip my toes into that side of it. It's again, as I quoted you, quoting me once, said it's the music stupid, but I like a great sounding record, and I like the originals on these.
Talk about the difference of sound of the two records. One of the things, too, in addition to just the, advancing technology of that era, was that Emmylou pretty famously worked for a long period of time with her eventual husband, Brian Ahern.
Right. An Actron truck.
In the Enactron truck, yeah. And that,
Didn't he engineer too? He was
yes, he was producer and engineer. And so
amazing sounding.
it is. And I think that's
His stuff was.
that contributes to part of the difference between them too, I would say.
I mean, to spill the beans, I added a dB of bass and I added a dB of treble on Graham. Took out a dB of upper mid range on Emmylou because I thought it got a little harsh in a couple of places. That's all.
She got a higher voice in that sense.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. I just sort of touched them. I didn't step.
You know what I noticed is funny when I listened to this. Okay, this is an important record for so many reasons that I forgot about. Well, first of all, the song "Luxury Liner," which I said before, is from the Submarine album, the Graham Parsons song. It's the title of the album, title of the song. But the second song is the first time I think a lot of people heard a Townes Van Zandt song with Poncho and Lefty, which later.
Great song.
Yeah, a beautiful song because a lot of people did.
I think hers is the definitive version too.
Right, and then Willie Nelson made it even more
lot.
famous.
Yeah.
But on that song, I just love the sound on this record, and I realized the vocals on it. All of a sudden, when I listened to this version, I listened to this first before I went back to the original, and I heard this reverb I didn't remember hearing. But after I listened to it, I went back, and the reverb was on the original. So
I didn't.
Pardon me? No, of
I
course you
didn't add
did.
any.
Of course. But I didn't remember that. And there was a haunting thing on this. In a way, the only thing I could describe it for in my layman terms is this reminded me of it surrounded me more. I know there's a famous Steve Hoffman thing on his forums. He talks like if you want to get your speakers in like perfect positioning from his point of view, you play the stereo Waterloo Sunset by the Kinks, and you hear when the vocals go right above your head, and it kind of feels like it's enveloping you and surrounding you. And that's kind of what I got on this. I don't remember getting, and after I listened to the first one, I didn't get it on the original. Again, it's fuller, it's richer. It's an alternative. The records are amazing sounding recordings, but there's something here that really brought me in more. Maybe because I'm sitting paying attention and blasting it louder. I don't know.
I think they're super enjoyable to listen to. I mean,
Yeah.
I love those records. I've had them forever. And when I heard the test pressings, I've listened to the actual records, but even hearing the test pressings, like, Kevin, I'm so glad we did these. So
now on both of these, now on this one, there's an interview with Albert Lee on here. And Albert Lee, they talk about the guitar he was playing and the sound he gets. And you especially hear this thing on Luxury Liner, that guitar.
yeah,
it's amazing how fast he is.
it is. And that's such an incredible lick. It's almost like a bluegrass banjo lick or something in a way. And it's the thing too that I love about that arrangement is, partly just that lick that he has in that, but they sped the song up a lot from what the Submarine Band version is, because the Submarine Band It's got more of a chugging kind of a feel to it. And the way they do it on the Emmylou record, it's kind of like almost more like the Graham's Las Vegas from Grievous Angel, that kind of feel in a way, you know.
And sometime with his playing, you almost it kind of crosses over with Hank DeVito's pedal steel.
Mhm.
So you almost don't know which is the pedal steel and which is the electric guitar lead, right?
Well, that's part of the thing too about the musicians on this is just their, you know, incredible ability, but also just their tastefulness and their musicianship and just how they know, you know, when to compliment, when to get out of the way. And, you know, that's really what you want.
If you strip back the stuff like on Elvis's stuff with all the orchestration, all the schmaltz added sometimes, and you hear James Burton and Glenn Harding, and that James Burton does some sort of groove riff, you know, that he does, and he does it on both these albums. But the thing that struck me more in a way are the ballads on here. Making Believe, for instance, that song is sublime on here. Hello Stranger by the
The Carter family,
head of the Carter family, the father, the
EP Carter.
creator, the inventor of the Carter family. That I love that with that's a song. Who's singing that? Was that Nicolette Larson does that great harmony on that. It's so good. The vocals are so good on this record. And I was reminded reading the liner notes on this, where Emmylou Harris is interviewed, and she talks about the final song on here, which is In My Hour of Darkness, which is pretty much a tribute to Clarence White, who had just died, who was in the Byrds. To me, one of the best guitar players ever, with the B bender on the telly.
The three guitar players we're talking about are,
Yeah.
in my mind, about the best there are.
Yeah.
Right? And you can hear that on these copies, the intertwining of the acoustic guitars, Berline's violin on this record. To me, the opening track is one of my all-time favorite tracks, Return of the Grievous Angel on
Yeah.
here. And the way that opens up. And I know I didn't realize this guy, Tom Brown, wrote the lyrics.
Yeah.
And they lost the recording or something, or the tape. And so Graham wrote new music. And what a perfect song.
It is.
Yeah.
It really is. And the lyrics are really, I've always thought were really super cool. And it's obviously he did too. And whatever he did to that tape, it sort of feels like it was meant to be because he turned it into an amazing song.
You know, the better recorded it is, the less I have to do. You know, it makes my job really easy.
Have you worked on Emmylou Harris records before at all? Before
I
this?
don't believe so. That might be the very first.
Oh.
Yeah.
You know, I was going to point out too that I'm pretty sure that Emmylou is the first female hi-fi we've had.
Wow.
There you go.
Yeah.
Another one would be good. I don't know if you still have it, but Don't Cry Now, the Linda Ronstadt Asylum record. I don't know if you have access to that, because
We
You know-
do. We actually just did a reissue of that. There was a Linda Ronstadt box set that we did for Record Store Day. That yeah, the trying to think. I think Bernie cut all those.
were those analog?
John Boylan went in with Bernie to cut Don't Cry Now. So
Were those analog? Do you know?
they were, yes.
Oh, because I love that record. And that was a weird contractional thing, because the Heart Like a Wheel, and they owe one more from it goes to Asylum. Does an Asylum record has to do one more for Capitol, and Capitol gets the big friggin' hit,
And
they-
then knocks it
gone.
out of the park. Yeah, it's an amazing story.
Wow,
Yes,
wow.
it is. That's a great record. I love that record.
Well, now that we got these out of the way, I do want to talk to you, Patrick, a little bit about last month, I guess, or the last thing was the box set of ZZ Top. And then soon after, you did the unnumbered versions. And there's some discussion about the unnumbered versus the numbered. And these stickers, they say like limited number edition, which means an edition is an edition. And there can be 10 editions. There can be a blue edition. There can be a numbered edition. So people are asking this question. So what do you say on that?
Well, yeah, you know, the number thing, I don't know how important that is to people. Some people seem to think that's, you know, makes it more collectible and getting a lower number and all that. I know a lot of people don't really care about that. They just want the record. And I think we started realizing, especially with a few titles that sold through so quickly, that it might make sense to, you know, let more people get them. And I've seen the chatter, and I've seen responses that land on both sides, that some people are incredulous that after, you said this was a limited numbered edition and now there's unnumbered ones. It's like other people are like, fantastic, now I can get it and I don't have to buy it from the flippers. And I think that those ZZ Top things followed pretty quickly after the box sold, because we were trying to, sort of avoid having flippers gouge people for the box set, which is
Well,
And those came
to
out
me, a
fast.
box is a
Not making
different
any
thing too. A box is different from individual records.
It is.
You
It
know,
absolutely is.
to me,
It's
it's
yeah, it's a
I'm,
different thing.
I'm
It's
agreeing. We've talked about this, Patrick and I talked about this, and I've said this on the thing. It, and whenever I say this, I'm accused also of being a shill for the man. The business of a record company is to sell as many records as they can for their artist and for their label, to make money, to do more records. And
yeah,
you want
I think I get that some people have a problem with the uncomfortable intersection of art and commerce, and that they think that that's kind of crass. And a lot of people react on that level. It's like, oh, you're just a greedy record company and blah blah blah. And I just say, well, it is our business to make records, to make money, and if we don't make money, we don't make records. So then you don't get them at
well,
all. And
in the
that's
case, okay, in the case of the ZZ Top, if you can answer this, is, you did actually 2,000 of those, not the normal 5,000, but I assume you press more to have the individuals as well.
exactly.
They came out pretty fast.
They did. That's why I say we wanted to follow up quickly, because
because the box sold out
we
so
didn't know
fast.
how the box was going to sell.
Yeah.
And it sold very quickly, and we were thrilled by that. But it's like, okay, well, let's try to make sure we can make these available to people before they have to be gouged on
So
Discog.
people had a chance to buy them. Now,
Yeah, and the other thing is, I saw a fair amount of people comment on the box that it's like, oh, this is really cool. It's a little too expensive for me. I'd really only just want these two records. And so now they have that opportunity. So, I mean, again, I've seen a lot of people that are really put off that they thought we were being misleading, and I'm sorry about that. We certainly didn't intend to be. But I've seen other people too that are very happy that, hey, I can get a copy of this now. And that's kind of what we're trying to feed.
I've had this discussion with one of your counterparts, with Jason Jones. We've talked about the Little Feat stuff, and Little Feat, I think they don't. I'm a huge Little Feat, massive Little Feat fan, and they don't sell as much as I think he would like them to sell. I mean, maybe it's okay, whatever. And it seems like lately they've done a few record store day things like the Lowell George and others. And the benefit you have, and this is again a marketing, sales, however you want to look at it, when it's a record store edition, people feel they have to buy it now, and whether they call it FOMO or not, but so be it, because otherwise people say, well, I can buy that in 6 months or next year, and then they forget about it and they never buy it. So putting out something on record store, whether it's a major label like Warner's or Rhino or a smaller independent, you're guaranteed so many. I know some smaller labels, they'll put something out because they know they're going to sell through. And I've done the thing with Zev on the jazz labels, Zev Feldman.
Yep.
You know that 4,000 or 3,000 or 5,000 of a Bill Evans record is going to sell through instead of sitting on a shelf in a store or online, and you can't sell them. And the economics make it easier to sell. Now you're limiting them now, aren't you? Or are you like,
How many copies you can buy?
2 copies? Is that?
Yeah, I think we did that on the ZZ Top box, because we saw people buying like 10 copies of Black Sabbath. And it's like, oh, well, if you're just going to buy it to sell it for 3 times as much money, that feels like it's a disadvantage to our other customers that want to get it. So, and that was a suggestion I saw online someplace, and we talked about it. It was like, yeah, you know what, maybe we should do that. We started off trying to be a little, kind of jazz and rock together. The jazz stuff for the most part wasn't selling as well. There wasn't as much demand. And we were also trying to be a little more niche, like Jaco Pastorius.
Why do you think the jazz stuff? I mean, is it because there's so much other quote jazz, like whether it's the Tone Poets or all the other jazz labels out there?
I don't know. I mean, I think there are jazz fans that are audiophile fans that love that stuff. I mean, it's not that they haven't sold, and some of them have done pretty well, but they weren't, at the level of some of the other things that we've done. Like, I was really excited to do television, and I got a little bit of pushback on that initially.
And look what happened. It
We
sold.
sold through on it. And that to me is like, okay, I kind of see what people sort of like. I hope I don't eat my words on this, but I kind of predict the Graham Parsons thing will have a similar path. I think there's a lot of people that love that album that'll be excited to get it. And a lot of people are like, oh, hey, I don't really know this record, but it sounds like it's worth giving it a shot.
When this came out, it didn't even hit the top 100. But it's such a seminal record. It's an important record in country rock, but again, more country than rock, but with these great musicians, these young hippies at the time, I guess. Um, I just think this is a beautiful record. And I think, I'm going to, as being, I'm not your pitchman. I know someone's going to accuse me of that, but I would say buy the two of these as a pair because they really go hand in hand. Now, you mentioned, I love Pieces of the Sky and, wrong album, Pieces of the Sky, and the second one, Elite Hotel. But you said there was issues with the tape. Is that?
Yeah, the tapes, when I went to get these things pulled and they, when they transfer these things, they do a report of them. And there just were a couple of issues that I thought sounded like it was going to be tough to cut from. So we decided to go with Luxury Liner, which, to me, that run of albums from Pieces of the Sky through like Roses in the Snow they're just
Yeah.
records.
I mean, I just love that period, Emmylou, and I feel fortunate to have seen probably 8 or 10 shows of her with the hot band. I mean, pretty much the same band, except for the guitar player switching up a little bit, overlapping at a great time. My only Graham Parsons thing, I don't even remember it. I was at Altamont as a kid at 15 years old, and the Flying Burrito Brothers play. I hardly remember them, and it was such a shit show being in the back of that. So it wasn't like a real thing, but he became this sort of cultural icon, obviously hanging out with the Rolling Stones and unfortunately his drug and alcohol use, the whole Joshua Street story. But, when you think of Gilded, you mentioned earlier before we got on, Kevin, that you had done the Intervention records, Flying Burrito Brothers, which are wonderful records too. And again, there's a song on there, Sin City, that I think, isn't that on one of these records at some point? Or it might think of something else. Oh, the song She.
Yeah.
From Luxury Liner, a burrito song. What a beautiful song that is too. Just two beautiful records.
I've done a lot of work with both Chris Hillman and Al Perkins, who was in one of the versions of that. They were also in Manassas, with Stills. So yeah, anyway, cool guys. Loved hanging with them. Loved working with them.
As we kind of wind down here, Patrick, do you have planned out for the next 6 months or a year of releases, or you're still kind of working around different titles and may swap them out?
We have a schedule, but a lot of the things are contingent on getting the proper approvals and things like that. So, it's kind of a wish list until we get far enough.
And workable tapes
on board. Yeah.
I assume Kevin has already cut some, aside from these, cut some future.
We've got several things that we already have lacquer shipped on. So
blink twice if no.
Yeah,
right. Because we talked about this. The last time we did this, I pulled a bunch of records and I just held them up. I'm not doing that this time. That are my wish list, and some were so esoteric and you told me like John Cale you don't have the rights to anymore, and there's a John Simon that no one would buy except me and one friend of mine, and I understand that. But obviously, Rhino a few years ago did a Smiths box, and I know I was just in London last week for a week and looking for original Smiths records, which I didn't find. Because I have my original Rhino or Warner Brothers or whatever it was, Sire records, I guess. And you read the chats too. A lot of people with the television want 70s and 80s and want the Cure and want the Smiths and want more of that, more like television.
Yep. Those are absolutely on my list of things to do. It's just working out the logistics of UK rep and tapes from the UK and things like that. I'm talking to some people in the UK to try to figure out how we can make this work. They're supportive. So we're trying to get there. And believe me, that's kind of our wish list too. So, and as far as the Smiths goes too, and beyond it just being UK rep, it's the Smiths. And
You mean Morrissey?
well, yeah, it's like trying to get the permissions and stuff like that is a hard thing to do. So,
Right, right.
but hey, we we'd do Led Zeppelin if we could, but
Course. And with the success of the ZZ top box, which actually I adore, and I really like the early stuff. I mean, that stuff better than the '80s period. So, I mean, maybe you'll do
What's
another.
the review on that, Mazzy?
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
I
totally.
love that stuff, and I know it, but I was never like a hardcore fan. I saw them when they were an opening act, third on the thing. But I love that because a certain rootsiness, rock and roll, a Texas thing there. Because of the success on that, I assume you're at least considering other box sets coming up, maybe.
Yeah, we're considering. I mean,
Yeah.
again, we kind of wanted to see how
Blink
this
3 times.
we wanted to see how this would do to see if it would really, if people are going to buy in at that level. And I think, a lot of people are like, whoa, it's $200. It's like, yeah, well, that's still $40 a record. So it's
But I understand,
not
some
everybody
people.
wants to spend $200. I
Right,
get that.
right,
And
right.
yet there are other people that are spending $150 for one album that's, audiophile album. So it's just people have their threshold.
Now,
But
dude,
because we don't, it's like I said, the whole hi-fi thing has been a bit of an experiment. And you kind of look at how to go based on what's worked.
Been a
And
fun one for me.
yeah, a personal question to both of you, and you can answer any way you want. Uh, I know Kevin has no time to listen to records, so because he's always, maybe he does. But Patrick,
Not a lot.
do you listen or do you buy or listen to any of these other things? I'm not going to kind of pin you. Like, for instance, a title that Rhino could do just came out, the UHQR The Doors, that is a 33, that's $150, I think, or 125, whatever. That's a lot for one record in a box, and they shrunk the box down. I feel vindicated. High five. I'm high-fiving myself. But and I've heard some people love it and some people, it depends. I mean, how does those kind of third party releases figure into what you're going to do? Like I said, Vinyl Pleased did Graham Parsons a year ago or so. Does that come into play when you think of titles?
it does to some extent for sure. And I think part of it for us is we look at, we don't want to step on the toes of people that we're doing third-party licenses with, partly, but also because it's a slightly different lane. Like I said, a $40 record versus a $150 record, and versus a $29.98 record. So it's or $24.98 record. So it's you know
Got it.
it just kind of like, okay, well, there's a place for this anyway because it's not the same thing basically. So yeah.
Well, okay.
But
You
I
got
know I've seen some people complain about it. Just, everybody's done this too many times. And I know the
well,
Bad Company got a lot of flack for that. And the Bad Company thing, it's unfortunate because it's such a great record and it sounds so good that people kind of, but it was competing against a double 45 acoustic sounds, right? Yeah.
yeah, $60 double record. I'm not a
Yeah.
big 45. In fact, I hate to admit this. It looks like because Kevin, I have 26 records that I'm selling that Kevin cut because I'm not a fan of double 45. My Music Matters Jazz, my originals. I'm keeping all the 33s. And it's not because I don't love the sound of them. It's because I don't play them because they're 45s.
I'm the same way. And by the way, most of those are coming out this classic series
And half of them, I think,
anyway.
or a percentage of them have, and I'm going to do
Yeah.
that. But I do love the sound. They're amazing, and they kind of really started. Those are the things that really started this whole ball rolling. Obviously, with Joe and Tone Poets, and then of course, I mean, these emulate that concept as well, and intervention too. Those things they do, you know. Well, there we go. Buy these if you like them. This is a
Great albums.
great record. Mazzy recommends this. Go buy it. And this too, a luxury liner from Rhino Records. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Patrick Milligan at Rhino Records.
Thank
And
you,
can't
Nezzy.
wait to
Thanks,
what's
Mazzy.
coming. Now, this is September 13th. So by the time people see this, the announcement has been made. And the next one will be October or November. Do you know yet?
November.
November, every 2 months. Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of the rhythm. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. Mazzy loves you. And thank you, Kevin. Have a great weekend, everyone.